Recorded.
Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started too if you're ready, Arden.
I am. Do you want to kick us off, Molly, or?
Yep, I will. So thanks everybody for joining our Informative Fridays. This is the first session in August, so thanks for joining us. Today is the differences between S3 add-ins and Infor Spreadsheet Designer. So before we get started, just wanted to share a quick reminder that Bales is now Nordic. As many of you know, Nordic Consulting acquired Bales a little over 2 years ago. So just a reminder, we continue to do the same great Infor ERP work that we've been known for, just doing it under the different brand of Nordic. So just a quick reminder there. With that, I will turn it over to Arden, who's presenting today.
Hey, Molly. Hey, everybody. My name is Arden Varney. Oh, this is nice. Good, Molly. I forgot to put in my title. I do have the ERP section though, so that's good. I'm director of service delivery over here at Nordic for the ERP group. So the technical group, the finance group, and the supply chain group kind of roll up under me. My background, I've been part of the Infor Lawson community since 1994. I was a customer way back, implemented version 6.1. Liked the product so much, I actually went to work for Lawson from 96 to 99, met my wife there, and I've been with Bales in one way, shape, or form since 1999. And I'm a finance guy, so I'm an accountant, I'm a CPA. Everything I do, my entire background is accounting. Worked for a public accounting firm way long time ago, and like I said, kind of got involved with the system side when we implemented Lawson way back, and I pretty much kept my feet in that ever since. So that's what I do. So again, I have to put this, just we always have to put the disclaimer out there. I like to think that everything I'm going to say will be accurate and reliable, but hey, you never know. I'm getting up there sometimes in age, or I'm getting up there in age, and sometimes I get a little confused. So pretty much everything I say, I'm pretty sure it's going to be good. But if you have any questions, if you're going to rely, based upon what I say today, and you'd like some help, with some consulting or some recommendations, I'd certainly be happy to do that and dig into a little bit more in detail. But again, so the disclaimer here, it's this session's being recorded, so you can read this at will. But basically, that's our disclaimer that we always have to show, right? And I'll just say the bottom part is highly recommended you contact Nordic ERP Services to make sure the solutions are tailored specifically to your needs. Okay. All right, so here's what we're going to cover today. For those of you that are on the old version of Infor Lawson, let's see, V9, V10, I'll do a quick history of what add-ins, where it came from, where it's going. Add-ins versus Infor Spreadsheet Designer, ISD. Infor Spreadsheet Designer, we'll do a quick overview of ISD. I'm going to focus mainly on the query side. There's awesome functionality with being able to upload transactions, like you can do upload data, just like you can do in the add-ins today. ISD makes that I think even a little bit easier going forward, but we have so much material to cover just with the query side. I'm going to focus on that today. If you do have any questions about the uploads, you can we'll certainly have a little bit of time at the end to cover that. Improved Excel integration. That's one thing that I really want to talk about, because most of us, many of us, are using Excel on a day-to-day basis. I know that pretty much when I open up my laptop for the day, the first thing I open is Outlook, followed quickly by Excel. So we use Excel all day, every day, a lot of us. It doesn't matter which group you're in. If you're in finance, tech, supply chain, HR, everybody's using Excel. And then I'll do a real quick demonstration of Power Pivot and how that links really well to what Infor Spreadsheet Designer is going to serve up. So that goes back into the whole integration piece, Infor Spreadsheet Designer really being kind of built into Excel now, which is really nice. So quick history, add-ins. The first time I saw add-ins, I think, was back in 2001. I was working on a client and I saw it and I thought, wow, this is the greatest thing ever. I don't have to key everything in by hand now. I can take information, get it into Excel and load it into Lawson. I can query some data out, and it was constantly improved or consistently improved, from 2001 all the way up to basically current day. They're available from version 7 through 10. You used to have to purchase it. There were clients that I'd go into and I'd say, oh, great, even 2005, 2006, 2015. Hey, where's your add-ins? Oh, we didn't buy it. I'm like, oh, what do you mean you didn't buy it? You should have bought it. You need it. Was not originally included in your Infor Lawson license. Infor Spreadsheet Designer comes with the current version. For today, I'm going to focus on queries. I'll walk through the important differences between add-ins and ISD and show you this, again, this new, I wouldn't say new, but improved functionality and better integration with Excel and pivot tables. For anybody that does any kind of, if you're querying out data, and I've done queries that are 1,000, 5,000, 100,000, 500,000. I did one query yesterday out of Infor Spreadsheet Designer that had 750,000 rows. There's not a whole lot you can do with that unless you're, even within Excel, unless you're going to use a pivot table, or what we're going to look at today, Power Pivot, to be able to slice and dice that thing. Okay, so what's different in add-ins? It was kind of based on the old LSF COBOL. You query or load tables, everything in V9, V10, it's a table. .dme or .uwf. So DME stands, I think, for Data Mining Engine, or UWF was an upload wizard. And they were two distinctly separate types of files. Like when you opened up your add-ins, you either opened it to do a query or a upload. Two completely separate, different types of forms that you were looking at. You can basically do, your add changes and deletes. And when you were in a form, and a Lawson form, Infor form, you would use Control Shift and the letter O to get information from fields to figure out, okay, what is it I'm actually looking at here? What's the file name? What's the field name, etc. On the new side, ISD, Infor Spreadsheet Designer, it's Landmark, it's LPL, the Lawson pattern language. You query, load business classes or lists. For those of you that already know a little bit about Infor Spreadsheet Designer, you can query not just the business classes, but Infor has lists. You can use custom lists to pull, but I can do both of those, not just the table. So what is a business class? Think about business class as a table. It's in my mind, it's the same thing. And sometimes in Infor's mind, it's the same thing, which I'm going to prove in a minute here. Instead of having these DME and or UWF files, the Infor Spreadsheet Designer is built right into the Excel file. Okay, you're going to see that in a minute if you haven't seen it already. It's kind of tagged right into the spreadsheet or the worksheet tab that you're working on. Okay. I can have a variety of actions. There's way more than add, change, delete. There's tons and tons of different actions. Control Shift left click to get the business class information from fields. Okay, so when you're on a form and you're thinking, well, wait a minute, I would like the information on this form and I want to pull this back into a query, I would use Control Shift left click instead of Control Shift O to figure out what it is that I'm looking at. I'm going to give an example of that in a minute. Okay. I'm just gonna, 1 second. All right, so what's different? Continued. Is there anything like the old data file text from V9, V10? Yes. Infor releases table definitions with each CU. You can get these from the Infor support division. Why didn't Infor label this documentation business class different definitions? I don't have a good answer for that. Keep in mind, when you're working with the business classes, there's a lot more fields. You'll notice this when you open up a query and you'll say, oh my good God, there's so many fields here to pull. There's different currencies, there's different dimensions. Infor gave us a ton of more data that we can get, a lot of different ways to get way more data into Infor, and by default, way more to pull out. So way more, what do I mean by that? In V9, V10, if you use your data file tags, might be a few hundred pages long. Like I know the one for GL, for IF, for AM, they were each maybe 100, 200 pages long. In CloudSuite, the latest finance table definition was over 3,200 pages. So here's page 1 of 3,200. I did not print this for you. I did not show you every page. I just want to give you an idea of, yeah, there's a lot, but the documentation is there. There's a lot of people that don't even know where this is, how to get to it. If you don't know how to get to it, let me know. I'll shoot you a link as to where you find this stuff. But it's part of your monthly updates. So here's a sample for the asset business class, because I know assets really well. I'm a finance guy. I'm going to try to stick with some really simple examples today, and some of the asset files are pretty easy as far as how you work with them. Probably that's why I'm so good at it, because it's not complicated, right? So here's a sample for your asset. It tells me the asset, it's a numeric, it's a 15-digit field. And again, so again, tons and tons of information from here. And this is way down on page 329. So add-ins were designed as a true Excel add-in. You'd log in, the wizard would come up. And right here, I don't know if you can see it too well, but I've got my little Infor Lawson query wizard, and this would sit on top of the worksheet, right? It would sit on top of, here's this AU or this GL names file. What have I got? AC activity. So I've got an activity query that I'm looking at. Here's all the fields. Here's my related fields button. I've got all my different tabs that I work with. It was a little overwhelming when you first learned it, but once you got to know it, and love it like I did, you just kind of deal with, all right, this sits atop my Excel worksheet. One of the issues, actually, I'm going to come up with issues here in a second. So any upload query or file was saved as either a .dme or a UWF, upload wizard. You'd end up with this mess. So in your file, in a folder somewhere, and I've seen this from my upgrade clients, I'm like, well, how many of these Excel add-ins do we want to convert to ISDs? And they open up something like this, right? So I've got AC history, I've got a file history, here's information from a form, all these DMEs, and then I got a whole bunch of UWFs, upload to AC06, upload to AC54, upload to BR05. So and here's all my DMEs, and here's all my UWFs. So this could get to be messy, right? Because you open up a file, and then you say, shoot, where's that related add-in? I got to go find it. You'll see here that in Infor Spreadsheet Designer, this is way simpler than what it is in add-ins. Another drawback, you had to be very careful when you're running queries and uploads. You had to make sure you're on the right tab. How many times did you open up a query wizard and you were on the wrong tab, or you pointed it towards the wrong tab and it either queried and overwrote all your data? Again, you just had to be, it was finicky. And teaching that to clients, first off, was kind of tricky. We're like, you just got to pay attention. Why did they design it like this? I don't know. You just have to pay attention. Sometimes the answer is, it is the way it is. Just get over it and we'll move on. I had to make sure you're on the right tab. Every time you want to run a new query against a different table, open up a new DME, be careful to point the results to the right tab. Upload, same issue. I can't tell you how many times I get a call from a client, hey, my upload's not working. Well, what's it doing? Well, it's looking at this tab, not that tab. Like, okay, we'll close it off, point to the right tab, reopen your add-in, and let's make sure that everything's looking at the right information. So it was a little clunky. Great functionality, but sometimes a little bit clunky. Now in ISD, I'll show you how we address this. So let's start with a basic query. So I'm going to pull in data from Infor Asset Management items. From the item form, I'll click Control Shift left click. So when I'm on my item form here, I've got an item here in the background. It's kind of grayed out, but I did a Control Shift left click on the asset item right here, and it pulls back and says, okay, this is what you're looking at. You're looking at the asset item business class, or basically file, right? Which module is it? What form name, what field name is it? I'm looking at the description. Where's the form? It's from the item form. How big is the field? What type of field is it, etc. So I get all that information just from Control Shift left click. There's additional information I can get to. I'll cover that a little bit later. So one of the main improvements is the way that ISD embeds itself into an individual Excel tab. So instead of it floating above, like up here where we've got, I've got my add-in kind of floating above the worksheet. It's almost like it's disconnected, right? But in this case, I'm going to see once I have ISD installed, I'm going to insert a new query, go to the Infor menu in Excel. So once you install your little add-in, I think add-ins now is under a add-ins tab. When you install the Infor ISD, it actually shows up as a separate tab right within Excel. So I've got my Infor, and you can see here I've got queries and uploads all in one convenient spot, right? So this is nice. And I have this insert query. And then what's going to happen is Infor is going to dump in my query properties right within the tab. So here I'm looking at my asset tab, and here's my asset information. So I got an asset number, a description, a status, a category. I've got a whole bunch more fields out here. But right within the tab, I have all this stored. So when I don't have to keep reopening new add-ins. In the old version, I would to do this asset book and item, I need 3 DMEs. And when I pull them up, I need to make sure that when I query it, I'm pointing them all to the right tab, and I have to refresh them all individually, right? If I want new information, I have to open up the query, point it to the right tab, click refresh. Okay. Within ISD, because it's in each tab, I can either refresh the current tab and just say, I just want to update my assets. Don't touch anything else. I just want to do assets. Or I can do refresh all and say, grab each one of these, all 3 of them, same time. Okay, huge time saver, right? Not even just time saver, I just don't have to be as careful. I say that kind of jokingly, like, yes, I am careful when I do things, but in the add-ins, I just have to be, it's almost like you're nervous. Okay, I got to open this one up, and I got to point it at this tab, and I got to go ahead and click refresh or query update. Then I have to go ahead and open up another one and make sure I'm on the right tab. It's just a lot of steps. Here, once I get it set up, I got my little queries tied into my Excel worksheet, refresh all, boom, I'm done. Okay, piece of cake. You can still bring in related fields just like in add-ins. So for those of you that were a little bit more sophisticated and knew the power of add-ins, you could, here's my asset file, okay? You right click, add relation, and then this relations field pops up. It's just it's very similar to the related fields in add-ins. You had a related fields button that you would push to get to the fields that are related. Here you'll see it pops up all the different related fields again. You'll see the little, whoops, you'll see the little scroll bar here. So there's lots and lots and lots of relations. That's one thing that can be a little tricky is when you first come into especially FSM or on the HCM side, and you're trying to deal with files, it can be a little bit tricky as to, wait a minute, what exactly am I looking for? And that's something that we can help with, right? Don't spin your wheels when you're looking at, shoot, I got 100, 1,000 different relations here. Which one am I looking at? We can get that information for you very quickly. Okay, one major area is the way that ISD returns the data to Excel. In the old days, using add-ins, data was returned in a basic format, right? It just kind of clicked in and your data popped into a tab, no formatting, no nothing. It just says, great, here's your data. If the underlying data changed, like if you said, oh shoot, I got to refresh my data today, and like on the asset file, let's say I know that I added 5 assets over the course of the day, I would have to go in, refresh, and then I would have 5 new rows in my spreadsheet. Now, for anybody that's used pivot tables, or if you're trying to read that data, if it's not in a table format and you do a refresh, more often than not, the pivot table is going to miss those last 5 rows that you just pulled, because it's going to say, well, okay, I'm going through from rows 1 through 100. It's kind of hard coded into the pivot table. You do a refresh. Now all of a sudden I have 105 rows. Like I said, and depending on how you set that pivot table up, more often than not, those 5 rows are going to be excluded from the pivot table. Okay. Using ISD, it returns the data in an Excel table. I think tables are one of those things in Excel that's a highly underutilized piece of functionality. There's tons and this was a piece of functionality I think was introduced back in 2007. But there's a ton of stuff that you can do with a table. And the nice thing about it returning into a table is that if you point a pivot table at it, the pivot table says, oh, you added 5 rows, fine. I will take into account the fact that you just added those 5 rows. You deleted 20 rows, great. I'm not going to count those blank fields. I'm just going to count whatever's in the table. If the table expands, if you said, oh, shoot, I need to add a field, I need to add a column, I forgot to add the state, I forgot to add the zip code. You can just, again, by using a table, and when you click the refresh button on your pivot table, the pivot table says, oh, you added state, oh, you added zip code automatically, and those will pop in as options for you to use in your pivot table. Okay, so again, this down here, returning table in an Excel table. Why is a table awesome? When the data expands, contracts, table resizes accordingly. Using Excel tables makes pivot tables much easier. Okay, so again, coming back to the whole, Excel integration. Why? Because Excel is awesome. When ISD returns a result, you'll see that Excel formats it as a table. So I'm in here looking, I've got my little query properties. I pulled in the asset table, business class. I know it's called business class, but here, right up here, Lawson named, or Infor named it table. It is a table. It's business class, I know. Anyway, got a little confused there. But on the query, I've got all the fields that I selected here. I've got my finance enterprise group, my asset, my description, etc. You'll see it's kind of formatted in this blue. By default, I think it comes through as blue. You can change it like you can, with other styles, other colors, etc. By default, it comes in as this nice soothing blue. How about that? But it's formatted in this table, in a table format automatically. And again, this table name, because it listed this table, it's very easy for me to reference this and pull it when I'm looking at pulling the data into a pivot table. Okay. So ISD will name each table based upon the business class being returned. For the 3 files I queried, so in this case, for this example, you're going to see here in a minute, I pulled the asset, the book, and the location. For those of you that don't understand, okay, great, I'm an HR person or I'm a supply chain person. What is he talking about? Think about an asset as a thing that you own. So an automobile. Okay, so we bought an automobile, and a book is how I depreciate that. For us accountants, depreciation is basically taking that amount of that I spent and expensing it over time. And so I will always have one asset and potentially multiple books. I can have a book for accounting purposes because our government likes to tax, likes to tax corporations. I also have a federal book that says, okay, I'm going to calculate the depreciation for accounting purposes and federal purposes slightly different. I can also have a state book because some states like to do their own thing. So in this case, for our purposes today, I have one asset and each asset has 3 books associated with it. Okay. I also have a location. So the location is, well, where is this thing? Is it in what address, what county? A lot of counties. I have to run reports that will spit out assets by county because sometimes we're taxed that way. I can also do it by state. And again, a lot of companies need to know where their assets are on a state-by-state basis. So I've got one asset, multiple books, and basically a bunch of locations. So when ISD pulled these, when I grabbed the tables or the business classes, it automatically named the tables for me. There's table asset book, table asset location. So asset book location, asset book location. Okay. Trying to keep this one relatively simple. Now I've worked with ISDs that have, 5, 10, 15 different, tables associated with them. So you can get pretty complex. So pivot tables, again, anybody that doesn't know pivot tables, you need to learn. And I'd be happy to teach you. Just shoot me an email and I'll walk through. So a pivot table is a great way to take a ton of data and boil it down into something meaningful. I'm going to show you that here in a minute. In the old days of add-ins, you could create pivot tables but it was a little trickier, messier that add-ins kind of return the results, and I'll say a flat file. It just kind of gave us results, didn't put it in this nice, neat table format. As mentioned above, ISD returns the data into a table. You say, so what? I say, so what? I'll show you so what. Just love pivot tables. So here's an example of an asset report. In the old, that's the FSM version. It's called an asset report. In the old version, for those of you that love form names like I do, I love a good old form name, AM260. So it's fine. It provides useful information. So I've got, it's how many pages is this? It's 21 pages. I've got, the assets that reported. This is all test data, by the way. It is for a client, but it's test data. I've got a company group. And I've got 284 million in basis, 23 million in depreciation for the year, 169 million in depreciation for life to date. Great. And I've got 21 pages worth of data. And all I do is every time I run it, I just come right to the bottom. I look at my totals and like, okay, fine. What can I do with this? It's boring. I want to do something with this. This is fine. Maybe I want to take this and just reconcile it to the GL, but maybe a manager comes to me and asks me some more complex questions about this, right? So how do I create a pretty pivot table? Easy. So I'm using standard Microsoft Excel 365, no macros, no codes. I'm not doing anything funky where you have to say, oh, shoot, I need to be a programmer to do this. No, if you know basic Excel, you can follow along and you can do this. You do, however, need to understand a basic relationship. So how does the asset file relate to the book file? I can make the argument that if you know how to do relationships in the old version of add-ins, then you would understand what a related table is here. It's basically the same thing. So as mentioned before, I got 3 separate tables and queries in my Excel file. So what I'm going to do is in Excel. Now you have to activate this from your file and options. I will go ahead and do a separate little slide on that. I forgot to do that. But you have to make sure that you enable Power Pivot. If you don't see it in your menu, it just means you have to go into File and Options and turn it on. A quick Google search will walk you through the 2 steps the 2 things you have to click on to bring that up. But in this case, I've got my basic Excel. So home, insert, everything here. Normally insert is where you put in a pivot table. But in this case, I'm going to use this little power pivot and say, okay, I'm going to take each one of these 3. I've got my asset, my book, and my item, and I'm just going to come over to Power Pivot, and for each tab, I'm going to say Add to Data Model. What this is going to do is it's basically going to structure these 3 separate tabs and pull them all together into one. How many of you guys in the old version of add-ins, in the old version of Excel, in your initial understanding, a lot of people would say, you know what, I've got my asset, my book, and I'm going to go over to the book file. And if I have a related field, I'm going to use VLOOKUP, I'm going to use XLOOKUP. And if you're not using XLOOKUP, you need to be using XLOOKUP, not VLOOKUP. I got a whole nother diatribe on that. But there's a lot of times clients will go in and just create tons and tons and tons of VLOOKUPs, XLOOKUPs to relate these 2 things together on one tab. Yes, you can still do that. It makes your Excel file much bigger. Sometimes, depending upon the number of rows, it's going to make your Excel file much slower every time it does a recalculation because it's going to go back and do all the XLOOKUPs or the VLOOKUPs again. I'm avoiding all that. I'm just saying, you know what? These tables, Infor has already provided a way for me to relate these tables together. I'm just going to let Excel do it. I don't have to use all these XLOOKUPs and VLOOKUPs again. And when I refresh it, I don't have to go back in and change my formulas. Okay. So I go to my Power Pivot on my menu right here. I click on the first tab / table in my spreadsheet. So in this case, asset, and I click Add to Data Model. So now what Excel is going to do, it's going to open up this little window here, Power Pivot for Excel. And right down here at the bottom, I see List Map Table Assets. So it says, okay, great. I have brought this in for you to use, Arden. What do you want to do next? So I'm going to go back into my spreadsheet, click on the Location tab, Add to Model, then do the same for the book. Add to Model. Now you have all 3 business classes / files in a data model right here. So I got, when I look at this little window, which is sitting on, this will be sitting on or floating on top of your Excel spreadsheet, right? So I got my list map, table asset, book, location right here. one more step. Click on the diagram view. So right here in the diagram view, I would have these, it would list these 3 tables sitting right here. All I have to do is say, well, how do these relate to each other? So what I did was I took the asset here and dragged it over to the asset on the asset book, and it created this little relationship arrow for me. And I did the same thing over here with the, where is it? Where's my location? Asset location. And I drag that over here to asset location. So now I can say, great, I know where this asset is because this is where all my addresses are kept. This is where all my depreciation is kept. And this is where all my basic asset information is kept. So I just drag 2 little arrows. This literally, again, once you understand how to use this, it literally took me 5 minutes to do this, as opposed to going in and creating hundreds or thousands or millions of XLOOKUPs. So we created the relationships. I clicked on save and I closed out of this window. Now, I came back over under my pivot table and I said, now insert your pivot table. From the home tab, click on pivot table. Oh, shoot, there's one little step here I didn't put it. What's going to say is when you drop down on that little pivot table, it's going to say, where do you want to grab this from? I'm going to say from data model, but I'm going to show you that in a minute. So I will update this slide, but I forgot one little step. It said new worksheet. And now I can pivot to my heart's content. Notice all 3 tables are available to select from right here. And in this particular case, I dragged the book, the status, whether or not it's active. And you can see here that this 284 million, I know it's a little bit small, ties to my 284 million on my asset report. My 23 million on year-to-date depreciation, 23 million, 169, 169. So everything ties to my nice, neat little asset report, but there's so much more I can do with this now that it's a pivot table, right? So all 3 tables are available. Yes, all my numbers are tied to the boring report I showed you. This is basically real time. Now, there's, I know Infor's got some cool tools with Burst. I know that I have clients that are using Data Lake to pull information. I got clients that are using Microsoft Power BI to pull information. Usually that's, I'll say, not necessarily real time, right? Because they got to do an ETL, extract, transform and load. They got to put the data into the data lake, do all the updates, and then they can report. This is pulling from real time. So it's my teeny tiny little data lake. So anytime that I come back in here and went to Infor and refresh these three tables or business classes, I just refresh my pivot table and everything's real time. So actually, hang on one second. Molly, I can just show what this looks like. So here's my asset file, and you can see here's my query properties. Here's my book, and again, here's my query properties from Infor. My locations, here's the states and everything where they're located. And then in Power Pivot, so here's my boring little report, right? But over here, because I have so many more fields to choose from, here's my basic report. I can see for company 681, here's the breakdown of what's in this $108 million right here. Here's my 108, but I've got all my individual pieces, my furniture, my chairs, my projects, etc. I can also say one of the big things that they wanted to know is well, wait a minute, what are my assets by state? So here's all my companies. I'm going to come back into my little location here. Here's my, oh, wait a minute, here's my state right up here. I'm going to bring this down and say, great, here's all my assets by state. Okay, so just with 2 clicks, I went from, I'll actually take the company rate out and just say, oh, I've got some that are blanks. I need to go fix those. But I've got, here's much I've got sitting in Arizona, California, Florida, etc. And again, just spin, spin, spin like you do with any other pivot table. Okay. And again, in this case, I'm looking at my accounting book. I can say, nope, I want to look at what's sitting in my federal book. Boom, everything's updated. Now the year to date is 0 because they only run depreciation once a year for their tax books. And I want you to think, hey, Arden's doing something funny because there's nothing in that year to date. That is absolutely 100% accurate. There's nothing in their tax depreciation books just yet. Okay. But everything here, again, if if tomorrow they come in and they say, okay, great, I added some new assets, I disposed of new assets, all I would need to do is under here, come back to my Infor, come back to refresh and refresh all three tables would update automatically. I'm not going to do it now because I don't think this will take too long, but I don't want to hang everything up. Oh, the one last piece here, under where I inserted this pivot table, I said insert pivot table. Normally you do from a table or range. Right here I did from the data model. That's how I got this information here. So pivot table, whoops, click off, pivot table from data model, right there. Okay, so I'm going to come back over to my point. So, whoa, hang on. I got the wrong screen. Hold, please. Here we go. Oh, great. I went all the way to the beginning. So I'm going to come down for my friend Molly here. So there's my last tab, and then Coffee with Consultants. So Molly, again, I haven't checked the chat to see if there's any questions out there, but
Yes.
I'll stop here.
Yep, there's questions for you. So
Oh.
how does ISD differ, if at all, to system performance based on volume and size? Today in add-ins, we can see very slow system performance when multiple teams are running very large queries.
I think, okay, so my short answer is going to be it depends. Most of the queries that I've been running in ISD for the file sizes that I'm running, I would say performance-wise are about the same as add-ins. I don't notice any huge, performance differences. We're in the middle of doing some stress testing right now with a client. Actually, it's going to be coming up this week, so I can maybe get you some answers on that. I don't know if anybody from our Bales team has noted any like performance degradation. But I would say, it depends upon it's going to depend, right, upon what you've got. What you've got running currently versus what you've got running in FSM. But in general, I haven't noticed any difference really between the add-ins and the ISD side.
Okay, next question. Is there a PDF that has all of the business classes for HR talent? I've been told that one does not exist, but just wanted to confirm. Thought possibly it might be in the same area as the PDF for FSM.
They might be. I don't know. Do we have anybody on the HCM side that would know the answer to that? Because I don't know off the top of my head.
Well, I can answer that they are not with the finance ones or supply chain ones.
We can get you that answer though, if we don't have any if I don't have any HCM experts over here with me today. But I'll paste this out of the chat so I have this, Molly.
Okay. And then are there any documents that show how to join the business classes to know which fields to link between? We do something similar in Crystal reporting with S3.
So for this one, yeah, I just happen to know. Tawny, I happen to know, okay, how the asset file relates to the how the asset file relates to the book file and the location file. Tawny, do you know, I know that in the old data file text, there were like indexes and relations, I think, built in at the bottom part of it. I don't know if that exists in the 3,200 page document that I showed earlier.
So it's the tech docs still have the relationships there. What I found is the easiest way to do it is when you're in ISD, click on the right click on your fields and select related. I forget what the term is, related data or something like that, and see what the system brings up, because it is not like it used to be where when I was in SQL or Access could link any table to another table. It is not the same. That relationship must exist in the background to use in ISD.
Okay, and then Arden, we had a couple questions that were pre-submitted. So one was, how do we install this, and are there any security roles needed?
Let's see. I don't know if there's any security. Hang on, I'm gonna
There is. Typically, it is built into the BIFIN role. But on the configuration, you can turn it on by role. You can turn query on only. You could turn on just uploads by role through the configuration. To get the download, you go to, let's see if I can do this, Administration Console, Other, and there is Application and System Links, and it brings you to a web page, and in the middle section, the second panel down or the second widget has Install Spreadsheet Designer link. That will open a new window. It gives you a couple of options on how to install it, and away you go.
Thank you. And last question, in S3, blank dates were 01 January 00. How do you select blank dates with ISD?
So you no longer have blank dates.
Say that one more time, Tanya. Was you no longer have?
You no longer have blank dates.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay. Gotcha.
Okay. That covers all the questions. If anybody has any more, feel free to drop them in the chat.
And Molly, this is Jerry. It does look like there may be some HRT table definitions. So I am going to go ahead and paste that or put that in the chat where I found them. Again, this is from a supply chain consultant. So, but if I was able to find it, I'm thinking this is a good sign. What do you guys think?
Do you want me to go back? I'm going to go directly back to the disclaimer slide.
I included a screen print too, and how I got there. I believe I missed one of the zip files, though. There's a zip file in the zip file, but if you follow along, you should be able to get there. And it does mention that there are TM table definitions, both the delta, which is the changes from one release to the other, as well as yet another zip file, because we can never have too many. And that is where you can go ahead and open that up, and you should have a wealth of information in those full large documents Arden mentioned. And then one other thing I did want to mention, in the Infor communities, I believe someone asked the question about how to find any blank records. And I will look at that too to see, because I think there was an answer given in there about what you need to do, whether they're truly blank or not. I don't know, but I remember seeing that just this week. I think Angela may have asked for that. So we'll see if we can find that and post that in.
Okay. And then Cheryl put in the chat, what about selecting a person with no term date? If not blank, what do you use to select?
A person with no term date. So they just want to pull all the blanks.
Yeah, and then she went on to say, currently select blank and add-ins and
Well,
yeah, come off mute if you want,
so,
Cheryl.
Yeah, sorry. No, this is Kelly. I think
Oh.
it's 1/1 of 1750. I have to go check my notes, but I'll put the date format in the chat for this. This is, I don't HR question because we get it all the time, because I asked the same thing and someone got it for me. So
1/1/1753.
Thank you.
You're
Mona.
welcome.
I knew it was 1/1/17 something.
That's completely intuitive. I understand that. 1753. Huh. Okay. Who knew?
That's because you're not a payroll person.
I never will be if I have to learn things like this.
Okay. So it looks like nothing else in the chat. So thanks everybody for joining us. As always, we have the Coffee with Consultants. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and use this offering. It's a great offering. It's a complimentary 30 minutes with someone if you just want to dive in a little bit deeper. And then also, hopefully you'll join us for our next sessions the rest of August. We have some good sessions coming up. If you need help registering, please email me. My email is down below. And then after August, our next session will be in October. Thanks everybody again, and thank you, Arden, for another fabulous presentation.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great day, team. Thank you, Arden.
Thank you.